Oh, it has been a while, hasn't it? Yeah. I mean, I've been good. I'm going to say good. Let's just
Good.
summarize. Summarize.
Summarize good.
Good. Good means I've survived. No, it was good. Yeah, I'm very well, thanks, Pete. How are you? More
I'm
to the
very well.
point.
Yeah. I'm very well. So you've changed everything, and I've changed nothing. Because I think you saw me pop up here, and you're like, everything looks exactly how it did last
Well,
time I saw you.
it's still quite blue, isn't it, in the background?
Yes, yes.
Apart from that,
You've got your RGBs going on. That's the main thing. I thought as long as the
it
RGB
wouldn't be
lighting makes it, then we're good.
it wouldn't be creative source. That probably has an impact on some of the things we're going to discuss as well in this long-awaited
Yes.
show.
Long awaited, yeah, yeah. We'll save it for the podcast. But I just finished watching your studio tour, and it gave me anxiety for two reasons. You got a lot of stuff there, mate. So I thought about you moving all that, and I saw the amount of B-roll footage that you would have shot for that video, and that gave me palpitations. So
Well,
yeah,
what's been happening is I've been occasionally watching Studio Live today over the last 4 years or so, and you've been giving lots of advice to people saying, you really don't need much to record music these days. Maybe an iPad. You'd probably recommend an audio interface to go along with that, a microphone, a pair of headphones.
yep.
And I thought, screw Pete Johns, I'm going to go in totally the opposite direction to this. In fact, the opposite direction to the rest of the world. I'm like, when everyone's coming out of the footy or something out of the stadium and everyone's going to the train station, I'm the guy who forgot something in the stands, and I'm walking against the
Pushing your way up.
flow. Oh, excuse me, sorry. Yeah, right. And it takes me twice as long to get anywhere as if I'd actually listened to you.
Well,
But yes.
see, I like that because and we'll get into it in a minute. We'll say hello to the folks who are here live in a moment as well.
Hi,
But
folks.
I kind of like that because it's like completely different. So I watch a lot of channels. I think we've talked about this before. I love retro tech, but I'm never going to go and buy an old Apple II and refurbish it and make it work again. I love watching other people do it. So it's kind of like that. So it's just I get my popcorn out and I'm just sitting here eating it, just going, geez, I wouldn't bloody do that. I'm glad Mike's doing that. So I like it.
Well, can I draw a little analogy here? Oh, sorry, we do want to say hi. Hi,
Yes,
everyone.
hello. Hi, everybody.
Hey.
We'll say good day for properly in a sec. But
I
yes.
think the way I think of it is this. I'd love to put a disclaimer on my channel, right? As soon as it comes up at the beginning of the video, you don't need all this shit, all right? Just because I'm a little bit worried now that people think that I think you need this to make music, right? And I've collected all these bits and pieces and gizmos. I don't think that that's true at all. But now, some people call it gas. I think that's a derogatory term, so I'm not going to... Do I sound defensive already? So, no, so it is gas, but there's something a little bit more to it. When occasionally if I'm walking through Perth, the lovely city of Perth where I am, and I'm sure the same happens in Adelaide, they have those like classic car rallies or something. They set them all up, and there's all like, 1950s Chevys and blah blah blah, and we all go, wow, look at that, isn't that cool? Oh, I do at least, and I go, wow, look at that,
Yeah.
Now, I don't think anyone at the classic car, vintage car rally is pretending you need one of those to get from A to B, or to go and buy your groceries, or even in fact, you just don't need one of those cars whatsoever, right?
Yep.
But however, if that's what you're into, and some people like to collect things and so I think a lot of the stuff I've got in here is more like collectibles.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I like playing with it. I find it a little bit. I'm a little bit nerdy, but you don't need it for anyone watching. You definitely don't need it
Yes,
to produce music. of a
Agreed.
really high
Agreed.
quality.
Funnily enough, I agree with that. Who would have thought? Who would have thought it? But no, I was watching that and thinking exactly that, and I've got no issues whatsoever with people. It's similar to people that like buying all the apps and all the plugins and like to noodle, and you're like,
Yeah.
you're not actually creating any music. They probably haven't finished a song since 1974, but they just love getting the new gear and noodling with it and playing with it and looking at it and going, ooh.
Absolutely.
And to me, that's totally fine. Like, as long as you enjoy it, it's like, people that collect things, people that collect watches. I've got a mate who likes buying expensive watches. And I'm like, why do you need a watch these days? We've all got freaking smart watches anyway. But he just likes them, but he doesn't buy them and wear them to flex on other people and think that he's suddenly a better status in society because he's wearing a Rolex. He likes it because he really likes the precision and the craftsmanship, and he likes to have his collection and get them out and polish them and whatever you do with watches. I don't know. Do you polish your gear?
And I should add to that as well. If your mate happened to be a YouTuber who makes videos about those watches, and companies send him stuff to look at, then his collection of watches grows a little bit quicker. So that's a little bit obviously what's happened for me as well. A little bit of a fortunate position to be given access to a whole bunch of stuff. People send it to Australia and they don't want to send it back, apparently.
Yeah.
It costs more.
Well, yeah, it costs too. Exactly. You have to, the import, like it costs more to pay the import and the stamp duty and all that stuff than it does to actually pay for the bit of kit, usually.
But I've learned a lot along the way. About, because before I was in a position of defending, you don't really need the hardware. You only need the plug-in, for example.
Yep.
But I was coming at it from a perspective of not having had the hardware.
Yeah.
So now I'm evaluating it from a position of having had both, and I can still say that you don't need the hardware.
Yeah.
But
it's interesting though. Yeah, when you do that comparison, it's interesting, and we will jump in a second. I promise. This is just what we thought you might like to see. What Mike and I just chat about before the shows, anyway. I did a video this week recording acoustic guitar. And it's the first time I'd actually bothered setting up a stereo mic pair in a really long time, because I just plugged in direct because I'm like, oh no, right. And I thought this is going to sound bad, and I'm going to prove to myself why I don't bother setting up this, and I'm just going to plug in direct and use a few plugins and some Sims. The two stereo mics just sounded so nice, and now I'm like, oh man, I've got a rod for my back, because now every time I want to record acoustic, I'm going to have to pull out the stands and pull out the mics and get all the gain set and all the stuff I hate to do because it's messy and annoying.
It is a pain,
But the sound,
we can get into that, but look, can I use two examples here? Because Susie, for people who don't watch my channel, Susie's my partner. She sings as well. She's a singer who takes no interest whatsoever in production. She just, I set everything up. She walks into the room and sings, and then she walks out. She likes the end result, but she doesn't understand. So she's a good yardstick, because if you say to her, "Can you hear the difference between this compressor being on and being bypassed?" So, I recently had my first proper hardware compressor come into the studio a few months ago, and I made a review about it, and I enjoyed it. There's a little bit of something about it which I liked. I said that in the video. But her reaction was, what a complete waste of time. What is that thing even doing? It's not, I can't hear any difference between when you've got it switched on and off, right? So I was like, okay, interesting. Now, but in another occasion, this wasn't sent to me, I bought a very, very expensive microphone, which, why would I? You don't need this, folks. But this is a renowned microphone. And when Suze knew it was on its way, she'd heard me talking about it, as you do before gear acquisition syndrome kicks in, justifying it. She said, "Why are you ordering that? You've already got 25 microphones." This is silly. And so the thing arrived, and I set it up in the studio, and I said, well, see what you think. And she went, okay then, but this is going to blah, blah, blah. And she sang about 2 lines into that microphone, and she said to me, stop. She said, I never want to sing into any other microphone ever again. She said, that's just amazing. She said, that's phenomenal. So it swings and roundabouts once in a while, So there you go.
Did it rhyme with Schmoyman, the microphone?
It did, yeah. But again, you've got to be careful with these things. It's probably why I'm avoiding giving specific model numbers. I don't want to give people the impression that that's the be-all and end-all. Because, I've got another reasonably expensive microphone, which I think I said in the video, it's good, but it's not good on everything, on all voices, in all rooms. It's really quite not good at times, and it costs a lot of money. So there you go.
There you go. All right, we better jump on in because we've got a podcast to record, and you've got some fishing to go do, I believe. So we'll.
Yeah, I am going fishing. Yeah, anyway, carry on. Don't get me talking about fishing. Oh.
Or could go off on another tangent. Yeah, we should just call this Tangents with Pete and Mike. That was the old show that we did. We just went off on tangents. We'll say good day to the folks who are here live. Please let us know if our levels are okay, if either of one of us needs to go up or come down. You're here to be our ears and eyes. So g'day, Deep Gravity. We'll do a quick roll call. Crow on a Wire's here. Semtex Cow. We've got Mr. Danny Gable. We've got Doug Kidder, who's guessing at your mic there. Doug. Mr. Mark Bro. We've got Audible Video. Rick Correa. We've got Tremor Bear. We've got our wonderful moderator, Thomas Christ, is here in the chat as well. Kionra from out your way, from way out west.
Oh, she's here. The school run didn't come off. She was supposed to be doing the school run. I assume the kids got a day off school today. They're like, she's like, Mike's on. My God. Screw schooling for the kids.
Give them the day off. It's too important. House Market, g'day to you. Scott Borthwick, Coldacre, plenty of other people that I'm sure I've missed. And look, you can be interactive. Hello, Jeremiah. You can be interactive. Mike and I will obviously rant and go off on tangents, but the beauty of having Mike here is he'll do a lot of talking, so I'll be able to watch the chat. If there's any relevant comments or questions that come up, we can throw them Mike's way. So
you don't want to have a guest on who doesn't talk, though, do you? That's like, you don't want that, do you?
You've done interviewing type stuff before, and sometimes it's like pulling teeth. And I would much rather someone that's got verbal diarrhea like Mike than someone who you just can't get anything out of. So I'll take it. That's the best compliment I've ever given you, Mike. Is that yes, your verbal diarrhea is quite useful.
Hey,
all right, I'm going to throw you away,
wear
mate.
it as a badge of honour.
I'm going to chuck you backstage because we're going to count in, and this is going to be our podcast recording. Cool. So I'll see you in a sec, mate. And we're recording live in 3, 2. Welcome to the Studio Live Today podcast. This week, we're talking all about moving your home studio. What do you need to do? What do you need to think about when you're taking your studio from one place to another place? My name is Pete Johns. This is Studio Live Today, where my goal is to help you create, record, and release your best music. The good news is that I'm not alone today. We're not going to go it alone because I happen to have someone who has just moved their home studio, and that would be the one, the only Mike from Creative Source. How you doing, mate?
Hey, when you said you were not alone, I almost burst out into copyrightable songs by certain Mr. Jackson. I could have been in trouble right away. On my first podcast. Do you know I've never been on a podcast before of any kind?
Shock.
Never. How long have podcasts been around for? Like 15, 20 years?
20 plus years. You've never been on a podcast.
I know.
Well, we'll be waiting for the Creative Source podcast to be coming soon, for sure. Why not? Sure. For the folks who don't know who you are, Mike from Creative Source, give us the elevator. You've been in the corporate world, mate. Give us the elevator pitch of who you are, what you do, and why anyone should care.
Okay, so I am not a producer. Some people think I am. I've done just a few commercial jobs here and there for mixing and stuff. So I'm a home recording studio enthusiast is really what I am. But I've been doing that, and I've probably had a home studio of some kind since about 1995. So I think I've picked up a couple of things here and there. So I don't profess to be, a producer of any kind or a professional even, but I like to give people some tips. And on my channel, Creative Source, I don't think we really get into the super complex stuff, a little bit at times, but mostly I'm there, a bit like you, Mr. Johns, to help people who are coming into this new and they're hearing all this new terminology and which can be intimidating, and I'm there to help them just get going and get their tracks down. And I'm not pretending that I'm going to make you a superstar. People do that, don't they? I don't know why.
Yeah, going to make
like
you a rock
there was
star.
a formula for it, you know. Anyway, yeah. So that's
very cool.
And yes, I have got Creative Source, the YouTube channel, and it's basically what I do with my whole life now.
That's it. And like me, this is your bread and butter, and this is your gig, which
It is my bread and butter, yeah.
And I know that you in your recent video, which we'll talk about in a moment, you talked about how important it is for your community, and you've got a wonderful community around you in both the Cakewalk community and the wider Creative Source community. And it's marvelous to see, and we do appreciate.
You watched
just like
till
I
the
did
end,
here.
didn't you? Because I said that
did.
right at the end of the video, and
I do my
impressed.
research. I'm a professional. I do my research.
very,
I
very-
watched
I'm very
20
impressed.
minutes of Mike ranting just so that I could know what to talk about here today. So do go and check that one out. It's down in the show notes. If you're listening on the audio version, the show notes will have a link to Mike's YouTube channel. I highly recommend going and checking it out and subscribing over there. If you're watching the video version, you're seeing our wonderful faces here, and that will be down in the description as well. We like to start each show with what's been happening in the last week. So I'll pass over to you, Mike. What's your last week been like around Creative Source land, or something you got up and coming in the works?
Well, I made a video this week about headphones, and it's really about recording headphones rather than studio headphones. So tracking headphones, like the ones that you have on your head right now, those HD
My
280
jack of all
Pros.
trades.
They were in the video, and they're to be recommended. They're those ones that you've got in your head. Out of the 9 that I looked at, I felt were the best in terms of isolation. What I'm going to call isolation. I could be using the term wrong, but they really don't leak much, so that when you're tracking, when you're recording, the sound doesn't come out of them into the microphone too much. They really do excel in that way. But I did also mention that I don't think they're the most comfortable headphones to wear for a really long time.
I've said that to other folks that ask me about headphones. I say they're the one thing that, as much as we'd love you to buy things from our affiliate links by going to the descriptions of our videos, the one thing that I think you need to try on are headphones, because I know a lot of people swear by AKG. I find their ear cups ridiculously uncomfortable, yet a lot of people think that they're the best quality for the value sort of budget brand. Whereas Sennheiser, they work for my melon, my ear shape and my head shape. They're super comfortable. Other people put them on and they're like, these things, get them off me. So I think you should actually go into a shop, a store, a physical bricks and mortar if you can, to try on headphones, because everyone's got a different head, and you're going to find some comfortable and some not. So very cool.
And look, let's be real about budget and things as well. I had a range of headphones in there, from those which were the cheapest for $99 all the way up to these that I've got on my... No, I didn't use these ones because these are open-backed. Similar to these ones, which cost $1,299. You don't need those. I think I ended up recommending a pair which in that video, which were about $400, which I thought, when you looked at in totality, you could use them for recording, probably for mixing as well. They're super high quality, blah blah blah. That was my recommendation. But there was another pair which I think for less than $300, Dynamic DT 770 Pros were awesome, and also for less than $150. There's some Audio Technica ones. They're called M50Xs, which I only recently got because I heard a lot of people talking about them. I thought I'd better have those and test them out, and they were quite good as well. There's a whole range for tracking. The quality of the
watch
sound
the video.
is not so important. Yeah, watch the video.
Yeah, exactly. Watch the video. Plenty of recommendations there over on the video. Here on Studio Live today, it's been a good week. We had our usual live shows that we did, GarageBand Weekly. We were doing some stereo guitar recording, so I actually broke out the microphones and did some stereo acoustic guitar recording, which was a lot of fun, but just as complex and just as annoying as I remembered it being. So if you want to catch up on that one, there's the full version as well as the short version if you don't have the attention span for an hour and a half of Pete faffing about trying to position mic stands. So go and check all of that out. We are here today, however, to talk about moving home studios. So Mike, you talk about it in the video. The video will be linked in the show notes and the description as well, where you go through your new home studio setup. And you do mention it a little bit, but what's the premise? Why did you choose to put yourself through this pain of moving all your gear to one place to another?
So me and Susie live in rented accommodation. We'd been living in the same house for about 6 years. And I think I mentioned in a previous video when I announced this that, like most people, it wasn't like we moved into the house and people went and we went, oh, where should we? Let's talk about where the studio should. We went. The kids are going there. There's the kitchen. That's that room which is left is your studio, right? So my previous studio. I want to talk about this. I think it's important for people at home. When you talk, I'm not an expert in acoustics whatsoever, but when you talk to people like that or watch videos about it, one thing they'll say is a square room is the worst possible room to have, okay? So just so folks know, I was in a square room for, 6 years, launched a YouTube channel. Not many people complained about my mixes, occasional person here. I think I made it work. Work, okay? So I was sort of happy-ish there. Very small space, though. I was continuously almost knocking things over as I set up my light stands for videos, and guitars got scratched and dented along the way. So I wasn't... but I did have the option there of moving to a larger room, the theatre room. Sue said after a while, look, no one uses a theatre room anyway. Who watches movies anymore? The kids are all on their phones, right? So you could be, and I could have moved then, like 2 years ago, into the theatre room. We had this agreement that I could do that, and I didn't. You know why? Because it's such a hassle to move even a few meters down there. So the choice was forced upon me when, after 6 years, when it came up for the renewal of our lease, our landlords said, we're not renewing. You've got a month. So we had a month's notice to move out.
Yep.
Just a quick one, because some people in the comments of some of my social media have kind of given my landlords a bit of a hard time. How could they do this to you, etc. But I just want to defend them a little bit, because they were very good landlords over the course of 6 years, so I don't want them to be bagged unnecessarily. And they acted according to the law and the contract in this case. So they didn't do anything. It's a bit
like
tough.
YouTube, isn't it, mate? You're building your house on borrowed land, or you're renting or leasing a platform. You play by the rules of the people.
Look,
that pay
I
bills.
signed the contract which said 1 month notice. So I'm personally, but it is tough. And not only that, but I was reading the newspaper at the time that this was the worst housing crisis in Perth since the Stone Age, apparently, or something like that, or at least since they had records in Perth for housing crises. And so there was a lot of stress immediately, like, oh, shoot, we've got to find a house nearby if we want to keep the kids in the same school. Move a house. I do have a boat on a trailer as well, so we needed one that could accommodate that, and the studio, and that's what happened. Yeah, I immediately went into. Do you want how am I going with this backstory? I know I waffle on a bit, but
I was going to say we like to keep the podcast around 30 to 45 minutes. So,
all right, I'll get to the point a bit more quickly. So once we knew that, I knew, having moved house so many times in my life, we moved around a lot when I was a kid, that I was going to have to get onto things right away. So I began packing up the day we found out. It took me 4.5 days of 12-hour days just to pack up the studio.
Yeah.
And then, fortunately, we actually found a new house after a week. Just a quick note to the kids out there. If you look after your house, you have a good reference, and it works in your favour. So we have excellent references, I'm proud to say, because we do look after stuff and we treat people well. And then we found a house within a week. We were able to move in after 4 weeks, and then it took me another 2 weeks on top of that to reassemble the studio.
Wow. Yeah. So you've already sort of touched on this, but I guess the physical approach. We'll talk about some other aspects of this as well. But the pure logistics and the physical approach of moving the amount of gear you have, and for anyone that's watched the video already, or I'd recommend you go watch it afterwards if you haven't. You got a lot of stuff, mate. You got a lot of things to move. What was the approach with that? Like when you walked into that room, you're like, right, everything's got to go. What was kind of your strategy around that for those of us that are just like, oh my God, where would you start? Where did you start?
So first of all, I'm a box keeper. So my
Nice.
attic is full of original boxes.
Yep.
This a little bit goes back to a time when I used to more like buy and sell gear, and I was aware that if you kept a box, that
Yes.
it helped the value of things when you go to sell them. But I also think there's nothing quite as good as the original packaging for making sure that possibly a delicate piece of gear is going to make it in one piece. So, so yes, the first thing I did was go up in the attic, and the boxes in the boxes. I sorted out all the boxes first of all. To be honest with you, I thought, right, how am I going to pack all this up? I can tell you from if you haven't moved much. Then I was very aware that it was going to be the unpacking stage where it was going to be a real hassle. So I planned ahead a little bit. And I made sure that, first of all, I boxed things up. Look, to be honest with you, I'm a bit OCD. So on the way, I dusted things off and cleaned them off before I put them in a box. This is just a good chance to do that. And I made sure that there was some logic to the way I packed the boxes. So I had a box. For me, this is a bit specific for audio interfaces.
Nice.
You don't need a box. You don't need a T-chest.
You probably don't have
audio.
multiple.
No,
Or at least not more than 2 or 3.
But or headphones or whatever it was. So I made sure that I was organised in the way that I put things in boxes.
Yep.
And then I sort of was pretty organised with boxes before I sort of packed things up. Had that all done, and I knew that another major hassle for me and for most people actually in some sort of studio was then going to be cables, right? I was very aware that I'm going to be in a rush at the other end. Everything's going to be out of control at the other end. I'm going to have videos and productions to make. So I'm going to be looking for that one frickin' USB to micro USB that no one uses anymore. And where's the cable? So I actually then, with all of my cables, I actually put them in different bags inside of a box. So I'd say I have all my guitar, 1/4 inch, guitar cables all together, put them in a bag, just wrote on it, because I've got all these paper bags now from supermarkets, which just seem to be filling up the house because I always forget to take them to the supermarket, have to buy another one.
Yep.
So they've so anyway, so cables is a big recommendation I could give. If you've got a lot of different cables, I wanted to make sure that when I was setting up again, if I needed an RCA cable or whatever it is, I'm going to know where to find it. So that was basically plan and label those boxes clearly.
Yeah.
That saved me, even though this thing took me 6 weeks, folks. I don't know why you're listening to me, but goodness knows how long it would have taken. But yeah, pretty much was it's a bit nerdy.
Like it.
I used to be a project manager when I was in the corporate world. Can you tell?
Yeah. Did you have a waterfall, or were you using a bit more of an agile strategy and doing some
I was
sprints?
an agile. Because I was in software development, so agile. But agile's not for everything. Anyway, we digress.
We do.
But
We go off on tangents.
But what project management teaches you, no matter how long you think it's going to take you to do something, if it's going to take you 3 times as long as that, no matter what anyone says,
Yep.
So.
Yeah, no, that's there's some great advice in there. If you just to summarize, if you missed any of those cool points, things you can do right now, even if you're not planning to move, even if you're like me and you're like, I don't want to move house for a decade. Keep in your boxes. I've got a box cupboard, which is just empty boxes. My wife thinks I'm mad, but yeah, same deal, is that they go back into there if you need to resell them, if you need to ship them, nothing like the original packaging. I like your clean the gear advice, because how tempting would it be to just chuck it in dust and grime and fingerprints and all? So I like that one. Cables are the bane of my existence. So separating out those I must admit I'm better now. I have in my drawers, I have little mini boxes, which are just, here's all my, because you know what it's like, you've got your mini USB, your micro, USB-C, USB-B.
Yep.
So I've got them separated out. So I like that tip for folks that are managing cables and labeling. Do you just get the old Sharpie and write on it? Do you use the Brother P-Touch and get some labels printed?
Yeah.
What's your strategy?
I'd say someone just said something in the chat there, which I think is relevant to this with the labels as well. But also, someone was saying that I've lost it now, but they were saying that they take a photograph of things and how they're all rigged up. That's very, very important. it's such a time saver these days. So I do that a little bit. It doesn't look very nice. Behind my desk, there's a lot of cables, and there's a lot of. I've got 4 devices, I think, on my desk, which are connected via ADAT ins and outs, word clock as well for digital timing, plus like a whole bunch of regular audio cables, balance cables going to this part of the studio. So what I do is I take that, what's that type of tape, masking tape, just that beige color masking tape. I just grab a strip of that, I sort of loop it around. I write on it first what that's for, and I just loop it around and label the end of my cable for that. So, that'll say ADAT in or whatever it will say. Because what happens is when you've got a more complex setup, what I think you need to do is, rather than just sort of plug everything in and then hope it all works, you kind of need to plug something in and then test it, and then plug the next thing in, test it. Otherwise, there will be something where the cable wasn't pushed all the way in correctly, or a cable is failing, or whatever. You will have problems. So it's easier just to check as you go along. That's
one at a time,
or at the stage of plugging back in. But the labels really, really help. Labeling.
There you go. Labels, get it done. Start labeling your stuff now. I've got some work to do because my stuff here is all. Every time I do a bit of a change or bring a new piece of kit, I guess the challenge for us is you're always bringing in and out different bits of kit from your setup, and it does make it challenging because sometimes you haven't replugged in the old thing that you unplugged to plug in the new thing that you're testing out. So I know first world problems. Don't you hate it when you get free gear from suppliers and then you have to unplug your old gear and put your new gear in? Oh yes, it's so hard being us.
It's terrible.
What about?
I don't even want any. Don't send me any more gear, folks. If anyone's watching from the supplier, can't be asked.
unless your name's Fender or Taylor or Gibson. And
Taylor. I've tried. I put out a Taylor guitar video. I was hoping, will they notice it? If it didn't, nothing so far, but it's got a few thousand views now, so you never know.
There you go. Anyway. You never know. So that's your physical approach, mate. It must have been mentally draining through that period of time, dealing with the potential anxiety of moving all your other stuff in your family, as well as managing the studio side of that. How did you find that? And any tips for folks that are moving, maybe for the first? So, say me, I haven't moved in 15 years. And I'm someone that likes to worry about things, as are many creative types. How did you go with the mental approach of getting all this done?
So Sue's made an observation about me. She hasn't got a name for this, but she said you go into a certain mode when there's like a big task to be done, and that's because I become hyper focused, like solidly hyper focused. It's not all good, but I will go. will go from 6 in the morning till 10 in the evening, and I will forget to eat, and I just plug away at it. There's nothing can stop me. It's not all good. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but that's my personality. Yep. And then, so I was okay while I was doing it. I was just too busy. Like, I definitely didn't need any problems. So thankfully, touch wood, and thank you to the universe, we didn't have any illnesses or crisis in the family or anything during that time, because that could have really, and that happens, obviously in life, so that could have really upset the apple. But thankfully that went through nicely. And I'm just going to say this, I don't mean this to be, look, I just want to say that for a lot of people, this would be incredibly stressful financially. It wasn't for us, thankfully, and I am thankful again to the channel. It wasn't terrible for us in that way, but for a lot of people, that would be the case. Yeah. And I've been there in my life so many times to understand that stress. It's only in recent years that's been easier for me. But yeah, so I'm so thankful, about where I am position-wise. But anyway, so for all that time, I'm just plugging away at it. I'm doing boxes. It's afterwards. So the last few days, actually, after I made that video, because for me, the studio tour video was like the final thing, the final task of moving, and then it's just going to be back to normal things. Then I've been absolutely exhausted, especially this week. It's just like post, it's just my brain is going, nah, please just let me play computer games now.
And I think I realized that because I think I saw we have a group chat with some other music YouTuber folks, and I think you put a post on there that you were just like 30 hours of B-roll and all the things that you had to do to put into that video, and you're like, now it's done, and now I'm out.
Hardest, yeah. Like, thankfully, it went quite well, because as you may know, and as anyone who produces anything, it doesn't have to be YouTube videos. It could be the latest album you're working on or what have you.
Yeah.
Sometimes just because you put more effort into something does not mean it's going to get more success.
Yeah.
And so I was a bit concerned as well at the end of 6 weeks, putting a full 4 days into making that video, that this is bound to fail. But it didn't on this occasion, so.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? And the same, like you said, same for music and songwriting. Sometimes you just whip together something and record it in 4 tracks and put it out, and people connect with it, and it's the best thing ever. And sometimes you spend days, weeks, months, and put your heart and soul into something, and it just falls flat. So that's why you just got to keep doing it.
I still listen to recordings that I made, say, 6 or 7 years ago, when I knew a lot less about music production than I do now. I had one microphone, one audio interface, and a computer, like a very basic setup. And occasionally, if I listen to some of those recordings, I think that's way better than some of the stuff I've produced recently.
It is. It's weird. There's that plateau of experience, isn't there, where you don't know what you're doing, so you're just twiddling knobs, and then you work out what sounds good. Then you watch a bunch of tutorials from blokes like us, and we tell you what to do, and then you try and implement that, and your recordings actually get worse for a while before they level out and get better again. Exactly. Because sometimes what you don't know can actually help, and it's.
I don't know if it's a good thing to digress a little bit, and this is expected. So one thing I did last weekend, it was so lovely, was I went, I'm going to record a song in my studio. Not for my YouTube channel or for social media or for anything like that. I've got this wonderful studio. I'm just going to make some music, which is what I spent last weekend doing. It was lovely. Nice. But what I actually ended up doing for one of those days, Saturday, when I was off to a flying start, got the click track down, a bit of a drum beat, recorded the bass, all the bass. But then I spent Sunday trying to find the right guitar tone for my electric guitar all day. Just, it's only a jangly, but honestly, it's just a jangly electric guitar, which is going to be in the background. But I felt, I want that tone. Honestly, I was thinking there's a certain tone on a certain record by the Counting Crows. I want that tone. I can hear it in this song. And but then again, it was very enjoyable to do that. But yeah, it make any difference.
No, it's and it's an important thing, and I meant to mention it in the opening, but the one thing I did was that resonated with more people than any tutorial I've done for a while is I did a 45-second short video where basically, because I saw a lot of stuff online in the last few weeks about people telling other people, oh no, you're so amateur, you're such a beginner, and you know the sorts. Everyone here knows the sorts on the forums that spend all their time. You're like, do you ever make any music? Because you're just spending your time on forums telling other people that their music is crap. So I made a short video that just said, there's only one reason to stop making music, and that is if you don't enjoy making music. And what I heard there from you is that sometimes, you just got to step back from everything and make music, and that's the best thing to do. So we'll return to the podcast in just a moment. We've just had Mike drop out for some reason, so we will get back onto that in just a moment. Hold the line, please, while we bring Mike back into the stream.
So obviously I've still got teething issues in my studio. Now, this is frustrating to me because I saw a social media post from you during the week, right, which was there's only one reason to stop making music. And I thought, that's a bit of a clickbait, isn't it? But, right. I thought, well, good on you, Pete Johns. Well done. But then I didn't end up watching that. And then just as you were about to reveal then my microphone, the universe doesn't want me to know the one reason why. Tell me.
It doesn't. First, I'll tell you to put your audio back over to your interface because it's thrown you onto your camera.
Okay, yeah. Oh, there you go. Well done. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, this
This is teamwork, folks.
There
I'm
you
back. I should
go.
be good. Yep.
Beautiful.
Yeah, carry on. Yeah,
So yes, we'll carry on. So I'll find an edit point so that we can edit it back into the podcast here. So I'll pause for two seconds and then we'll jump straight back in.
Mm-hmm.
So the one reason to not create music is if you don't enjoy doing it. And what you told me about there, Mike, was that you wanted to just create some music. So you wanted to just get in your studio, and instead of worrying about the social media and how many impressions you're going to get and how many YouTube likes you're going to get, you just wanted to make music. So that is the one thing that I think you need to do. And don't listen to the trolls, because they're trolls. That we call them trolls for a reason.
It's a very difficult balance that all musicians tread in life once they begin to make money from music at all, okay? Because there are necessities in life. I don't go along... I think when people talk about, oh, you should just make music for art's sake, I think, well, do you have electricity bills to pay? Because I do. I don't. Yeah. So, and I don't want to be old man cynical, but this is real. So if you ever decided, right, I don't want to work in the factory anymore, I want to play guitar as a living, you probably find yourself in a local cover band or something, right?
Yeah.
And then when you rock up to gigs, you go, do we play that new song that we wrote at the wedding? Or do we... So I'm not saying, because I spent years in an originals band. We used to lie to landlords of pubs and say we played covers, and then when we rocked up, we played our own material, and it went fine, right? So I'm not saying don't do that, but what I mean is that often we find ourselves in this position where you know, there's the reality of life. So for me and you as well, that exists in a YouTube sense of you know, we're both doing this full time. So a certain amount of what we do is to you know, generate more interest in our channels and what have you. Yeah. And we have to do that.
I definitely
agree.
But
It's nice to take a photo sometimes, isn't it? For example, which you're not going to post anywhere, right? Isn't it lovely? I love that.
It is delightful. Yeah, early on, I got this bit of advice, and I guess for anyone that's looking to do a bit of a side hustle or get into YouTube or get into education or whatever, and that is to do the four things for the channel and then one thing for you. So like the old Google 80-20 rule, it's like 80% of the time you're working, and then 20% of the time you're doing something that you got no idea whether people are going to care about or it's going to resonate, but you are having a blast doing it. And for me, it's my happy hour show. Every week I play cover songs for an hour, and that's my time to do. And funnily enough, I think people enjoy it and it resonates with people because they can see that I'm passionate about it and actually enjoying doing it, and I've learned a bunch of songs. So yes, I agree with that premise as well. Let's get back to your move. I've got a question here. Did anything not make the cut? Did you take an opportunity to go, actually, that's staying in the box and not going back in the studio? Yeah.
So this is a little bit like when you go from one computer to another and you decide not all the plugins are going to make it across. So I think last time I had all of my plugins installed, for example, on my computer, I had 2,500 plugins installed, which was just ridiculous. So it's a lot less now. So a little bit of the same thing happened with hardware. There was a couple of things that just were given away and what have you. But mostly the way it happened for me was a lot of stuff stayed in boxes. Some of that stuff I boxed up, especially headphones. Yep. I used to have them hanging all around my studio in the old studio. Look, this collection of whatever, 25 headphones or something stupid like that. And I sort of decided now that was just ridiculous. And I just looked at, well, which ones have I really used in the 3 or 4 months, and and a little bit the same with microphones as well. A lot of them are just in boxes, and I have a few handy, which I will actually use. And I'm proud to say that amongst those, despite the fact that I may have some much more expensive microphones now, amongst those is still the Rode NT1A, which I have in a drawer right here, because that's my kind of grabber microphone thing. Yeah. And you mentioned recording in stereo, and I have a stereo pair of the Rode NT5s, which were my first stereo pair of small condenser microphones, which I bought several years ago, and I still have them, at my fingertips, even though I've got some Neumanns just down there. They're different for different occasions, yeah. But all the other ones, or most of the other ones, are just in boxes. They're in Susie donated a cupboard to me out in the hallway outside, which is full of the stuff which I don't need
cupboard
in the studio.
of unwanted gears, like the Toy Story. They're all the unwanted toys. All your unwanted microphones are sitting in there talking to each other.
There's microphones sitting in there saying, "There's microphones in there saying, I'm really good on cymbals." I'm saying I don't use cymbals. Virtual drums. There's no drum kits.
Oh man, love it. We've got a few sort of quick fire segments here because we are coming towards the end of the show. But we've got a question here from Doug, and I was going to ask this too, but I'll let Doug ask it in his words. Doug says to Mike, "What was the biggest obstacle you had in setting up the new studio?" So yes, I was going to ask your biggest challenge. What do you think was the biggest obstacle that you had to overcome?
The biggest obstacle for me is to do with the way rentals work here in Australia, because I know, having lived in the UK, that things are a bit different. But here, I don't know if it's the same in all states, but certainly in West Australia, you can't attach anything to the walls, so you can't drill into the walls and attach anything. You can see one of my guitars hanging up just here. I like to have them up. If they're on stands, they tend to get in the way, and you tend to bang into them. So it's nice to have them up on the wall, but I can't do that. So I had to actually create. I talked about this in the video. So I actually built. It looks like an amp stand, but it's got a bit at the back. So I did that, and also the absorption panels. You can see a couple there. They can't be attached to the wall. So I was going to build some stands for them from scratch. And then when I began to cost that out, because the costs do add up with all these small things, I began to realise that going down to my local hardware store, Bunnings here, rip-off merchants, and it was going to cost so much, like per stand was going to cost about $120 or something to make it if I bought bits of metal and screws or wood, right? It's ridiculous. And the cost of timber is very... So then I just went on Amazon. I thought, well, what can I buy? So I bought some TV stands, and I just adapted them a little bit, and just didn't use the bit that...
Yep. Another edit point. We had this in the pre-show, folks, where Mike had to just jump out a couple of times. So we've got a good edit point there because he's mentioned that, and you're back on the camera.
I've got dodgy USB connection to one. I found out this morning. So I, rather than sorry, if you want to
still on the camera audio, so you'll need to just switch that back again.
Oh, of course.
We'll go there. You just create work for me, mate. I'm going to have to actually edit now. I don't know about this. You're back.
You have to work for a living.
We got you up to. We got you up to. I'm just trying to remember the last word you said, which was the. You just. No, I can't even remember now. Maybe just start from Bunnings and getting the stands.
Bunnings, rip-off merchants. So I worked out that it was going to cost around about $150 to make these things out of metal wood. So I decided to go on Amazon. I looked up TV stands, and I just ordered a bunch of them. I needed a whole bunch, and just adapt to them. Save me a bit of time as well. Yes, I was aware though that building from scratch was going to cost a lot of time as well.
Yeah,
so I did that, and then finally I was just going to buy some piece of furniture from IKEA. I scoured IKEA to kind of keep as the base for a guitar stand.
Yep.
I basically I didn't want to rely on a piece of furniture. So I thought, well, if I build something which I can put my amps on, the amps will create some weight at the bottom. But I couldn't find anything which was really suitable in the end. So I did make essentially it's the wooden box myself. Now, I'm not a carpenter. I try these things. Making a wooden box is very hard, to be honest with anyone. I don't know if anyone in the chat knows anything about carpentry, but I'm sure it's a test they will do for you at carpentry school. Make a wooden box, and you think, oh, this will be easy.
Yep.
So, but it took me a day, I think, to build the two stands that you see in the video, amp stand with a guitar stand coming out the top. Yeah,
Very good.
That was the biggest challenge, and you know,
as we've discussed in the
overcame
past, I'm also really handy, so I'll be taking notes and doing that. You've
I've
seen me put up a
I
green
rem-
screen.
I've seen you put up a green screen, absolutely.
Good times. What's the biggest advantage? What are you loving the most about the new studio? You talked a little bit about it in the opening, but what's the
So
best
the
thing about it?
opening, I talked about the fact that I spent all those years in a square room, and I thought,
Yeah.
oh, well, look at what I can do in a square room. Immediately, as soon as I was in a rectangular shaped room, which is a bit bigger as well, the difference in controlling especially the low end was so much easier. So I'm enjoying the sound in here more than anything else. It's so wonderful. I've just done some recordings, as I say, last weekend. Even tracking in here was before I couldn't really track in my old studio. There wasn't much space. It felt claustrophobic. So I used to run a snake down to another room in my house, and then I used to control my door remotely with my iPad or what have you. And so the actual recordings were done in another room because my studio was good for mixing but not good for tracking.
Yeah.
This works for both. Everything. I mean, workflows for making my videos has just been so much easier because of that little bit of extra space. And it's not a lot. It's about 1 meter wider in width, and it's about 2 meters longer in length. But that's just enough to allow me to swing a cat, so to speak. And it's really workflow wise. I think above everything else, whether you're recording audio or making videos like we do or whatever, I think workflow is king. And if I can quickly digress, I know you want to end this, but someone was asking me about, we were talking in my Facebook group a little bit about dual monitors. And one thing I was saying about if you've got dual monitors, which I love for workflow, and they're big ones, that it pushes your monitors, your speakers out wider. Which means you can't get the equilateral triangle with your sitting position, which everyone says, oh, you should get an equilateral triangle, right?
Yes.
I sacrifice that for better workflow. I'll happily admit that. And besides, if I want an equilateral triangle with my studio monitors, thankfully my chair has wheels on it and I can do this.
Just
and
get
now I've got
away.
an equilateral triangle, and now I haven't. So there you go. So, but no, I actually do value workflow a little bit over quality sometimes, just like I value performance over quality as well.
Well, it's and that's a very good point, because I guess before we ask you the final question here, you've reiterated it a couple of times. I have too. You don't need all of this gear. You don't. I'll wait on Mike to come on back. Luckily, I'd only just started a rant there, so I can go back into that rant. Yeah, we'll get there. You're on the camera, so you know the drill. And
Hopefully,
you're back.
the microphone should be correct this time.
You are sounding good. You are sounding good. Luckily, I only just started a rant there, so I can count myself back in and do the video editing clicks that I normally do to get myself back in. 3, 2. So that's a good segue before we ask the final question, because I think that really is something that you talk about and I talk about, and people may watch your video, and I know you're conscious of this and go, oh no, do I need all this stuff? Do I need all this gear? Mike's got so much stuff. It took him 20 minutes to explain and show me all the different bits of hardware kit. You don't need all that stuff to create music. So the performance, as you say there, and I always say that a great song recorded on your iPhone is still better than a crappy song in $1 million studio.
A good example of that is something that me and you will have said in the past, that for tracking, as we did earlier with headphones, you want closed back headphones so that you don't have this bleed. But what I've since found on different occasions with working with Susie was thinking it was more important that she had a pair of headphones that she felt comfortable with.
Yep.
and even if they're open back headphones and there's some bleed, go with it. If the performance will be there, it will be better.
Yep.
So I've even heard of people actually recording vocals not using headphones at all and using speakers and just going, oh, screw the bleed. And so I think it's that's what we're all looking for, really, isn't it? Is that performance?
Yeah, exactly. And to enjoy yourself, to get the best quality that you can, and sometimes, you need to do things differently. So, and again, I always say, we'll give you advice, we'll tell you what works for us, but your methods may be completely different to everything that we do, and that's okay. Mike, through this whole experience, if someone is about to go through what you've just been through, what's the advice you give? If you had to sit them down and you've got a minute to just say, right, here's what you need to do. Here's the summary. Here's the short version of everything that you've experienced over the last 6 weeks. What would you tell them?
Well, for me personally, it's get everything done and then start making music. What I'd hate for me personally is to kind of still have bits and pieces that still needed to be plugged in, and then think, I can't be, but I'll do that later. I just think get it done, get it out of the way, and then fully concentrate on making music would be my approach. That's just a mental thing, I think it's very messy. I think it's two different types of brains. Creativity and like wiring up a studio and setting up a studio, and for me, maybe it's just me, I don't multitask that well, but I would just suggest that although it's very hard work, it's all upfront work. If you do all the upfront work, make sure everything's plugged in, make sure everything's working, he says, with his audio interface cutting out 5 times in a show.
What are you talking about? The podcast editing will be perfect. No one will ever know that.
Once that's all done, you can sit back and enjoy the fruits of your labor, mostly. And that's what I'm doing now. Going out fishing.
Beautiful. Going out fishing, absolutely. Well, to get you out on the boat and out fishing, we will finish off there. But I did want to say thank you for sharing that. There's a lot of really interesting insights in there. And I know for myself and anyone else who may have to be moving your home studio anytime soon, hopefully you've picked up some tips and realised that you can get it done and it's not actually that daunting. And once you're in your new space, hey, it's like what do they say? Change is as good as a holiday sometimes.
That's right, exactly.
Do go and check out Mike's channel, Creative Source. There's a link down in the show notes or in the description if you're watching on the video. And coming up this week on Studio Live today, we've got the usual suspects. We've got Your Music Live, got the Happy Hour, got GarageBand Weekly, where we'll be doing some mixing. So a whole lot of stuff coming your way. So make sure you're subscribed here. Make sure you're subscribed over to Mike at Creative Source. And Mike, any parting words for the fine Studio Live Today community?
Just a huge thank you to everyone who's been in the chat there. Nice of you to be here. Some people over from my channel as well who sometimes come here as well. And just thank you again for supporting folks like us, YouTubers who are just trying to pass on some of the bits and pieces of knowledge that we've found over the years. And very grateful to you all. And thank you.
Thank you very much. That is going to do it for this week's episode of the Studio Live Today podcast. As we say at the end of every show, please be kind to yourself, be kind to others, keep creating, and we'll see ya next time. And we are still here because this is the post show. Just we will let folks go though, because I'm gonna say a quick farewell to Mike, and then I'm gonna let him go fishing. But thank you for the folks who've been here live. We'll piece together. That went fine, mate. It was only like 3 times. You just gave me 3 edit points I have to put back together, but that'll be easy.
Yeah, I have this one for those still here. I have this one audio interface which I use for. It's not a part of my normal recording audio interface, and it's plugged into a USB hub, and it just decided, it actually happened yesterday for the first time, just to cut out for a moment.
Yep.
And that's what it's been doing during this show, so I guess I'll be looking into that.
Yeah, this might be
fishing.
A new powered hub in your future, by the sounds of it, because they are.
I think sometimes when you plug a lot of things into them, they just go, no.
They go, nah, too much. I give up. I know. It's a bit like us. You give people too many things to think about at the same time, and they'll just go, nah, I'm not doing any of that. I'm going fishing. Speaking of going fishing, I'm going to let you go, folks. But thank you to everyone who's here. Let's just say a quick goodbye to Danny Gable. Sorry, don't know where Danny Young, Johnny Young, Doug Kidder. Thanks for being here. Thomas Christ, the Semtex Cow, Tremor Bear, Crow on a Wire. Anyone at Kionra, thank you for joining us very super early over there on the West Coast. Thanks everyone for being here. Keep an eye out for the podcast. Make sure you subscribe to that on your podcast catcher of choice. And until next time, Mike, we'll have to have you back on the show again soon and find out how the new studio's tracking as well.
See ya.
Bye, folks.